The Han River Valley, located in the midsection of the Korean peninsula, has remained a focal point throughout Korean history. A flourishing trade with China and Japan originated here. Gwangju, which covered a wide region south of the river, was a fertile grain belt. He who loses Gwangju will perish. Thus, the ruler of the Han River Valley assumed leadership over the entire peninsula, and he who lost control of the valley perished. This mountain fortress has witnessed the rise and fall of many dynasties in the Han River Valley over the last 2 millennia. Namhan Sanseong is known to have been a fortress of King Onjo, the founder of the Baekje Kingdom, and Sungnyeojeon is the shrine dedicated to him. He was the second son of So-no, the second queen of Chumong, who founded the Goguryeo Kingdom. This became Onjo's second capital. In fact, many remains dating back to early Baekje have been found. But recent excavations showed that this was also the site of Chujang Fortress, built during unified Shilla. In 2007, the site of an armory 40 meters long and very large roof tiles weighing up to 19 kilograms were found. They were confirmed to be from the 7th through 10th centuries, which corresponds with the unified Shilla period. It was Wanggeon, the founding king of Goryeo, who named the area Gwangju. Goryeo won a battle at this fortress and repelled a large Mongol army. In the early 13th century, Mongolia attacked the fortress twice, but the deputy commander of Gwangju and the residents were able to stop the enemy. The importance of the fortress came to light 300 years later, after the Chosun Kingdom had fought 2 wars. The site was recommended to King Sunjo when he was looking for an impregnable fortress to serve as the last defense. I heard that it is the best situated fortress in the kingdom. It is steep outside and deep inside, with a long mountain ridge that the enemy cannot surround easily. After the disgrace of having fled the capital for 2 years during the Japanese invasions, Sunjo was keenly aware of the need for a fortress he could defend. Therefore, the old fortress wall was repaired partially during Sunjo's reign, and the east and south gates were reconstructed at that time. But the fortress reconstruction was completed at the behest of King Injo in a project that took over 2 years. The king faced a threat from the later Jin, which became the Qing dynasty in China. He had a wall more than 12 kilometers long built over the old ruins, making this the longest mountain fortress in the country. Also constructed were the West Gate, with easy access from the capital, and the North Gate, to bring provisions in from rice fields near the Han River. The south side of the mountaintop was lower than the rest. Therefore, semicircular bastions were added to fortify the defenses. The crenellation atop the 12-kilometer wall helped to protect the soldiers, and 12 cannon emplacements were also built. Soldiers stood on guard along the wall at 1-meter intervals. 16 hidden gates were added to facilitate movement along the wide wall, and drainage ditches were built to prevent water from eroding the walls. King Injo was committed to fortifying the fortress extensively. King Injo summoned Buddhist monks from around the kingdom to create a military force. 9 temples were built inside the fortress to accommodate them. Great priest Koksong and his monks who built the steep northwestern section of the 12-kilometer wall. The people directing the construction work were personally held accountable, and expenditures were carefully monitored. General Yi Hui put his own money into building the southeastern side, but was beheaded for embezzlement. Cheongmyang Shrine is dedicated to the workers' efforts and their sacrifices. When the construction was completed, King Injo ordered a major reorganization of the Chosun military, and the command of the southern approaches was established at Namhan Sanseong. The command was made one of the 5 army garrisons to protect the capital area and the royal palaces. The commander was allowed to participate in deliberations at the highest level of the Chosun government. Suo Changde, the military command post, is the most splendid structure at Namhan Sanseong. Many military facilities were built in addition to Suo Changde. Chimgui-jung, which literally means rest one's head on the spear, was a weapons production facility, and traces of the gunpowder production can still be seen today. We can read what Injo had in mind for his detached palace compound. It's smaller than the royal palace compounds in the capital, but comprised 2 sections. The upper palace was where the king ate and slept, while the lower palace was where the affairs of state were conducted. The king's quarters were located in an inner hall called Naehaengung. Pukenggak, the royal secretary's quarters. Chwaseongdang, a workplace for top local officials. And Namhaenggak, the hall for the armed guards, were all placed around the inner hall to serve as a layer of protection. Among the 23 detached palaces around the kingdom, this was the only one in which King Injo had a royal ancestral shrine and altar to the gods of land and grain. This means that he considered the fortress to be the kingdom's last line of defense. Thus, from over 200 years of reconstruction work, starting in the 17th century, transformed Namhan Sanseong into a temporary capital for times of emergencies. Indeed, 10 years after King Injo had the fortress rebuilt, a Manchu army of 130,000 invaded Chosun. King Injo retreated to Namhan Sanseong, vowing to resist to the death. It was winter, and the soldiers suffered from frostbite. They were forced to tear down buildings for firewood, but the Manchu army could not force open the fortress gates. The only reason the king surrendered was because Kangwa Island fell to the invaders and the prince was held prisoner. When the king surrenders, his subject gives his life. When we surrender, I will end my life. When a letter of surrender was sent out, Jong-un killed himself with a sword. Oh Dal-jae and Yoon Jip gave their lives for the king by volunteering to be hostages. Kim Sang-hun tried to starve himself to death, believing he must give his life rather than surrender. Afterwards, Hyunjol Temple was built within the fortress walls to honor these martyrs, and it became the spiritual center of resistance. King Hyojong, who as a prince had been held hostage in China for 8 years, secretly planned a war of revenge. When an envoy came from Qing, the king sent us to a stronghold. It's called Namhan Sanseong, where the king takes refuge in times of war. King Hyojong ordered Hamel to produce new weapons to support a force of 100,000 troops. The military might at Namhan Sanseong, where his father had resisted the Manchus, was reinforced. The fortress was at the heart of careful preparations for war and vindication of Chosun's painful disgrace. The spirit is revived 300 years later during the resistance against Japanese occupation. In 1896, Japan took its first steps toward colonizing Korea by assassinating the queen and confining King Kojong. Volunteers from all over the country gathered at Namhan Sanseong to form a righteous army of resistance. A force of some 1,600 planned to recapture Seoul with guns and cannons that were stored at the fortress. With Namhan Sanseong as our base, we have gathered a resistance force from the 3 southern provinces to march on the capital. Our aim is to drive out the Japanese and save the king. The Japanese, wary of the resistance movement, utterly demolished Namhan Sanseong, a sacred place to the Koreans. The Japanese removed the weapons from Namhan Sanseong in 1907. In 1917, they moved all the military facilities outside the fortress walls and turned the fortress into ruins. In 1930, they demolished even the detached palace inside the compound. It was 2002, half a century after Korea regained her independence, when the palace destroyed by the Japanese was restored. No longer needed to protect the dynasty, the old fortress became a protector of nature and history. Now, pine trees grow thick around Suochangdae, which was the command center during wartime. Bugs fly over the old ramparts, and birds build nests on the king's trees. A little country in the Orient. There's a kingdom that repelled countless invasions over 1,000 years. And here stands Namhan Sanseong, a stronghold, and the spirit of protecting the nation for a millennium.